All right. Well, the song is over. I guess we can get into it. It will be like a little bit more of a chill session, as I didn't really have a. I don't think we had a ton of progress this week, but let's get into it and see where we're at. So this is our all-team tactical meeting. We're going to use this time to sync up on work going on around our org, eliminate blockers, and prioritize our work. Just FYI, this call is recorded and we share it on social media, so let me know if that's an issue for you. On the lag metric side, we had $78 last week. Actually, let me just double check because I did that last night, and I just want to make sure that I have the most up to date in case someone made a big purchase last night. Oh, 101.55. There we go. Okay. 101. So minus 10 roughly. And we've had more weekly transacting users this week than in the last couple weeks. We're up to 5, 0 new users, and 11 communities deployed. On the team-wide announcements, don't forget to put anything that you do in the What Did You Ship channel. I see Tom is using it now. I see Arcusti's using it now. Winverse, if you want to put yourself in there when you put that when you put the weekly all hands up, you can go ahead and also just drop a quick note in What Did You Ship. Just says ship the all hands. And thanks a lot, Winverse. Appreciate it. All right. We also have some standard bounties if you're looking for something to do. Card designs, 2.5K BCard. Articles, 6.5K BCard. Plus for editing and cover art. Emails, if you want to write an email to our users. And I think like the biggest thing is if you want to call some nonprofits, I think that would be one of the better things you could do. Just kind of pitch them on our services. I don't have a lot of material for you right now, which I know is what might make people hesitate. But I do think that even if you don't have material, just getting in there and talking to groups is a good way to do it. So I would say that's probably the biggest way you could help BCard right now is to talk to some more nonprofits. Moving down the list on the milestone perspective to get 10 weekly transacting users, we did have a meeting with Transcard last week. And basically they said if you want to be able to get funds in and out of those accounts, or rather out of those accounts, you'd have to go through compliance again. And basically they said you probably don't want to do that because of the volume you have. And like reading between the lines, they also don't want to do that because of the volume we have. So, we've had 50K total volume roughly since we started. And we need to get to something like 1 million volume a month to for them to really start wanting to help us more. Anyways, all this to say that we don't have those options to egress with Transcard right now. So we really need to focus on getting more transaction volume if we want to do that. And honestly, our focus right now is creating engagement. I think that is upstream from getting from being able to actually get the transaction volume on the card. Yeah. Makes sense?
Yeah, it definitely does to me.
All right, awesome. So we'll work on engagement as we're going. 10 new users a week on the community pages. Not much progress. I do think that Tom, well, I mean, maybe you can tell me yourself, Tom. It looked like in the What Did You Ship, you did a little work on this.
Hey, can you hear me? It doesn't. It says my mic's not working, but it looks like it
I
is.
can hear you. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's just fake UI errors. Yeah. So mostly the work this week was minimal. I only got to spend a couple of hours at the tail of the week integrating the snapshot tools, and so I was able to make a little bit of progress there in terms of being able to summon. Does a user have voting power for a particular space and strategy? So that's kind of one of the first key steps along the way to re-implementing the voting capability into the widgetized site, as it were. So a couple of security considerations that I've been thinking through while working on that. I don't know if you wanted to discuss it now or if it's anything major to talk about, but it's maybe something to use some of our existing infrastructure along with sort of the new build to make things as easy as possible for users to deploy votes and things in the future.
I think that we should do that. So basically, the like because it's a static site, it's hard to keep information hidden or secret. And there's some of the things that we need that are secret. And so I do think that what we could do is have that like endpoint on our existing API where they just make a they just make a call, and we check the URL that the call is coming from. Basically, we only allow requests from certain URLs, and then we can whitelist those URLs. Maybe even just create like uh, a file or a database table which holds the URLs which are okay.
Yeah, that's totally exactly what I was thinking as well. We already kind of have the API endpoint for use internally for managing those snapshot queries, what with the voting that we're doing. So it would just be as you say, a sort of like exposure of that API to externals, and then a little bit of a secure it down so that only certain URLs can call it. And that way we're sort of enabling it partner by partner. If they enable the widget, then we have to turn it on our end. I guess it's one more sort of tie infrastructurally back to us, which is, it could be a good thing or a bad thing. But along with the authentication system, having the snapshot votes route through our servers as well too, it's sort of one more tie-in.
Yeah, and like it to me it begs the question, like, one, I guess like ultimately the long goal would be like, hey, well, we should open source or like make it obvious how you can create your own like secrets endpoint in the long run, but it doesn't really help us right now to do that, let's say. In that it's more work for us to try to open source and deploy something for this. I mean, I don't know.
Agreed.
Anyways.
Sort of assume as long as we're going to assume that API channel will be accessible and available, which minimally requires us to just maintain Vercel services, whatever. Then that's I'd say no issue for the near to medium term for sure.
Yeah, and I think like the easiest way to mitigate this is to just in the README for the open source like website builder that we're making, just put like this is what it expects. You can use ours or make your own.
Yeah, that's a good point. Or even we could have something that's like maybe like easy input, get your own snapshot key type thing override, which would then allow it to all run locally.
Oh yeah, that's a good point too. And related to that, I had something else related to that. Anyways, enough of these technical details, I guess. But yeah, no, I think we're on the same page with that.
Okay,
but yeah.
It is all working, and I will be able to sort of prototype the flow out, at least with sort of my local deploy. And then once we make sort of that securitization thing down, we should be able to get that up and running out for the world to test.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Tom. All right. On the in-app voting and endowment funds, I did share this on socials. I want to drop hosts and Black Flag tokens. I want to poke Merkle again about this. We did get more events this month, and there are a lot of more people who are kind of like interested. I think in general, like just through the hosts, getting them to like, since we now have an intake form for their social media accounts, it's super natural for hosts to like retweet anything that we kind of put out that we're like, hey, this vote is up for this person's event. So it's a good way for us to like kind of get that base level virality. So that I think that's a interesting way that we can do that. That's like kind of like a, let's say, positive sum. It's good for us. It's good for the host. This is kind of going back to some of the things we talked about last week. What value is there to a host? Well, if we're recasting them on Farcaster, they get a little bit more reach. Same on Twitter and LinkedIn. They're getting a little bit more reach. The better our social media accounts are, the more valuable it is for them to get retweeted by us or for us to mention them. So yeah, I think that's a nice little tie in there. And we'll see where it goes from there. I want to post it on socials again this week, so hopefully I'll do that before the end of the week. We have 10 high quality communities, so we're working on our own community. Arcasy, did you want to give us a little update on this?
Sure. Yeah. So I haven't done too much work in the last week on the historical accounting, but I did. Well, I mean, we had a meeting and talked about like what the new flow could look like, and how it sort of should work for contributor rewards. And I went in later than I had planned, but I've put in the contributor rewards that we've, for lack of a better term, like socialized in the June 4th and June 11th meetings. And then I kind of, like after we review this week's rewards, and I can go and upload those into splits, which would then be approved by someone else for distribution.
Cool. Yeah,
But
I think
yeah,
the approval is in splits, right? Like the signature itself is the approval.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, and so like that's on that like contributor multisig in which we're only going to have Black Flag tokens for now. Or I think like Black Flag, maybe BCard later, but it's only going to be a 2 of 3 with myself, Arcusti, and NF Thinker. And so that's kind of the idea, is that like if 2 of us say that this transaction is good, then it's good, because we're already discussing them here at this weekly meeting. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Arcusti, for that update. Any other updates?
Okay.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Oh, I see you muted. Okay. All right. Well, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess I was going to say that like now I'm trying to just figure out how to integrate it into an accounting process. So more work to be done there.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I think I'm excited to see where this goes, and I think this is the kind of tools that we want to be testing. So this is great. All right. On the task perspective, actually, I'm going to pop over this. I don't think that there's much new that's there right now. Oops, let's delete this. Oh, I see you're putting the voting considerations in here. All right. Thanks for that, Tom. Anyways, let's discuss each one of these. I prepped and held the all hands last week for 2 hours, so we'll put 2K BCard. Does that make sense to people?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
All right, great. Winverse shipped, taped and shared the all hands on YouTube. This is something that, oh, you know what? I forget to put this down, but I also shared on socials. So we've already agreed that that's 2K BCard. Feel like 500 BCard for this. Does that make sense? For sharing the all hands?
Sure.
All right. I had an ops work session with Arcusti, or 1 hour. We just worked through basically what Arcusti just talked about. We'll put it's 1K BCard. Looking at that, does that make sense to everyone? 1K BCard, 1K for me and 1K for Arcusti.
Yep.
I'm gonna get someone other than Arcusti to.
For sure, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we're paying 1,000 hours, so 2 hours makes sense.
Okay. So prepped and met with Transcard. The meeting ended up being rather quick, but we still had to do our prep work. So 500 BCard here. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I'll just stay on mute and say yeah.
All right, and 500 BCard for sharing the Black Flag vote on socials. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It does. Yeah, I was thinking back on that Transcard meeting. I was like, what was the most bullish thing they could have asked us to do? And I was like, maybe they wanted us to build the stablecoin transfer system for the back end of their Transcard.
Yeah, we wish. I think that they're like kind of not leading edge on that stuff. Like they're really trailing edge. So I don't think that they'll ever ask us for that stuff.
Well, that was me thinking why they would ask us, because they were just like, none of us even have a handle on our own technical back end here. So.
Yeah, we're all just floating in the dark. Cool. So what's next? Arcusti reconciled and accrued BCard owed to contributors. That's only 30 minutes, huh? 500 BCard. Thanks for that, Arcusti. Set up BCard distribution. Oh, work session we already discussed. Set up BCard distributions for contributor rewards submitted and approved. So that would be again 500 BCard. And Tom spent some time investigating potential options for voting. 1K BCard. All right. Does this make sense to everyone?
It does.
All right. And just a reminder to everyone, BCard is essentially, the idea is that it's ownership in this organization. We haven't like it's not legally binding until we give out tokens. And even the tokens that we're giving out, as long as they're, they have to be distributed by the multisig for them to be completely binding, which we have never done quite yet, except for our contributor tokens, like our NFTs. All this to say that the intent behind this is that these BCard tokens that people are accruing relate directly to ownership of our Panama Foundation, which owns everything that we have in the fiat world. So, yeah, it's a reason to get that BCard. All right. So for the discussion items, honestly, what I really just wanted to do here was just have a vibe check. I kind of said how I was like having a little difficulty. I've been feeling like a general malaise just in general. I think like maybe it's due to world events, maybe it's due to other things, but yeah, I just wanted to, we haven't had a retrospective in a while, and this is not necessarily like meant for a retrospective. We'll definitely have one summer, probably late June, early July. But for now, I just want to have like a little vibe check and, check in with people. How are you doing? How's life? That kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let's do
Yeah,
it.
I definitely second what you're feeling in terms of maybe it is the global geopolitics or whatever, but the general malaise is definitely like set in at times. It's kind of sad that like moving into the summer when things should be sort of more optimistic or at least bright and sunny and nice out, that like it feels a little gloomy, I guess. Otherwise,
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like it's so weird, right? Because like often I have difficulty understanding why I feel the way I do about things. But it's true every time I see this stuff about like war in the Middle East and just like, some next political thing happening, which is just like, I don't know. I guess like it makes me appreciate how boring the previous 4 years were. Like when we were complaining, I guess like, hey, we were complaining that we don't have like access to crypto, which is like, it's a big deal, but at the same time, it's not as big a deal as like thousands or maybe even millions of people dying, right? And so I look fondly back to those times when we were like, the big problem we have is advancing our technology and our personal freedoms, and now we're kind of on our back foot, like even just fighting for there are people who are just fighting for relative safety, and that is not a good feeling.
Can
Oh,
anyone else hear Lynx?
you can't hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Yeah, now we can hear you, but you faded out for a bit. And
What did you hear?
You were out for maybe 20 seconds.
Oh yeah, basically I was saying that we used to, like 4 years ago, it was kind of like it was almost boring, and our big problem was creating access to crypto, and which is important, but it's just not as important as like basic safety for humans all around the world. And now we have like thousands or millions of people dying, and I feel like that's worse, right? Maybe I'll exit and come back because I see Tom keeps exiting and coming back. Maybe he still can't hear me.
I'm hearing you okay now. Oh boy, lots of people leaving and coming back.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay. Tom, can you hear me?
Tom just came back.
I can hear you now. My one device was going haywire, so I'm switching.
Cool. Yeah, so that's all I was saying, was that like the problems we were facing 4 years ago were different, maybe like a little bit more inspiring and interesting. Like, hey, we're actually trying to increase our personal freedoms, and now we're kind of at the point where we're just trying to hold on, I think, to what we've got, and it's a bit more of a demoralizing battle. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, cycles in history. I yeah, had hoped we were kind of moving beyond this fear of the other thing, but no, that's what's used as fuel to advance anti-human objectives. So yeah, that's frustrating. It's demoralizing. It's disappointing. But you know what? There are, anytime in history there's bad things happening and people continue to do what they do, and activism is a separate topic, and how you participate in activism. Some people want to join protests. Others are very uncomfortable doing that. It does show volume. So in fact, this thing, like last Saturday, was the largest protest in U.S. history.
Really?
5 million people. Yep. And so yeah, there are many things to be optimistic about. There's also, this thing with Iran, and if they decide to use if the U.S. decides to use that penetrator, that deep penetrator, that could set off World War III. We've had this set of back in the Cold War, it was when I was in college, they were talking about reinstating the draft. That was in the 80s, late 80s. That shows you how old I am. Yeah, so these things come in cycles, but I just watched a TED Talk, and it was, why make art in times of crisis? And it was only about a 20-minute talk, and she touched on AI and troubles in the world and death and dying and all the troubles, and how can you do these joyful things when there's so much pain and suffering and misery in the world? But that is part of what brings us joy and humanity and allows us to continue and carry on and have a purpose for being. And like with AI, she brought up the question, why make art when AI can do generative art? Well, if you're doing it for yourself, it doesn't matter, right? The joy of the act of that creative act of expressing yourself, whether it's through paint, whatever the arts are, it's important, and don't deny yourself that. And the same thing with getting away from screens and being in nature. That's one of the things that keeps me sane, frankly. With I've mentioned my health problems briefly that are generally not a problem, but when I'm feeling down or feeling like my life isn't what I would like it to be in terms of the functioning organism, I look at nature and get in the garden, and it helps me. So no, I think that I don't disagree with you, and I feel that it's more important than ever, like we talked about before, connecting with other humans, like-minded individuals. Like for folks that have never gone to a protest, for example, regardless of your political, I'm not talking about necessarily this Trump thing on Saturday, but just in general, if there's something you care deeply about, if you join other people in that, there is a huge amount of solidarity in that, and it is joyful. It's not a negative experience. So anyway, I'll just end on that. But I am feeling that myself and trying to find those ways to find joy and feel like I'm making a difference in ways that I can contribute, that allow me to remain positive.
Yeah, I think like that's one of the mantras I have for my own sustainability is kind of like act local, right? So you think global, act local, think long term, act today, think big, act small. Like this idea that like we can't do anything about those big things that are beyond our scope. What we can do is just kind of around us, and in doing something just around you, often I find it gives me like a little bit more agency, or at least I feel differently, right? Like it's a perspective change. Hey, I can't do anything about World War III, but I can, connect with the people around me and make sure they're okay, right? So I think that that's really good advice, Dros, that you just gave. So appreciate that. Anyone else want to share?
Thanks, and thanks for opening up the discussion, because it's that undercurrent that I think often people don't want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of the things I was thinking is it's like I was rushing to come back from taking my kid to school today, and I was thinking to myself, like, oh, I want to be more honest about how I feel, because I want BCard to be a place where we can be honest about those kinds of things, right? Like, I don't want to come in and, like, at work, I often have to kind of pretend that everything's great, everything's we're all good, it's all the plan, everything's happening, everything's good, right? And I didn't want BCard to be that kind of place. I wanted BCard to be like more of a, hey, this is where we're at. It's like, a place of honesty, let's say, if that makes sense. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing. Anyone else want to share? How are you feeling, Arkisti?
Well, so I guess like with crypto specifically, I think it kind of went from a like thing where nothing seemed like it was actually permitted to like an environment where it seems like anything goes, and kind of like the potential for the Tron IPO and how that kind of went about it's sort of like, well, I don't know if this actually like is positive for crypto and what I'm trying to achieve with it. So it's sort of like,
yeah, I felt that too, especially with all these like banks getting in on the stablecoin game. I'm just like, oh, this is just another way for them to like screw you. Right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and I guess, and there's that whole current too of like how the institutions are coming in and basically going to take everything that people have been working on and kind of incorporate it into their view of the world, I guess you could say. And kind of what will that mean going forward?
Yeah, I worry about that, right? Because I feel like a lot of the power of crypto came from, or like not the power, but the draw to me of crypto came from this idea that it is like really cypherpunk. Like it's all about enhancing personal freedoms and this kind of thing. And I'm worried that like as some of these groups are adopting it, which I guess like adoption is a good thing, right? Like don't get me wrong, it's a good thing. But I worry that as more groups adopt it, the people that are going to be working on it are not going to be in it for the cypherpunk reasons, and I worry like what's going to happen as a result. Like I feel like we're really lucky because Ethereum and especially Ethereum, I feel like it just still has those cypherpunk ideals, and a lot of institutions are building on Ethereum, which is good. But I don't know. I feel a lot of unease. For instance, about like Privy being acquired by Stripe and now JP Morgan using Base to launch her own stablecoin and this kind of thing. It's just a general feeling of unease that I'm just like, oh, is this kind of like what are they going to be doing with this technology, and is it just going to turn into everything else?
Well, and
Yeah, I hear you on that for sure.
It's kind of like, I guess, like in the past, everyone's like, oh, bringing, we need to bring the next billion users on, and would be good if there's like mainstream adoption and stuff. And now some of that is happening, but maybe it's not happening in the way that everyone imagined it would happen, or or maybe people were just naive in thinking about what that would mean. And I guess like in some respects, maybe in some respects it's not important, and others it is, like in terms of like financial accessibility. But I think it's still, it's still probably going to mean that people that, in the parts of the world that don't have access to good, or haven't had access to like banking and finance.
Oh, I stopped hearing our Christy. Can you hear him? Hello.
With crypto.
I can't
Oh,
hear.
can you
Oh,
hear-
now I can.
Yeah,
Okay.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I guess.
The last thing I heard was like people who don't have access to finance, and then I kind of
Yeah,
missed
well,
after that.
so yeah, so
I've heard the
I-
whole
like
thing, Arkirsty.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
I think
So I
Link's
mean, I
getting
think
his audio.
I think they're gonna they'll finance without. Oops. I think we have people going in and out.
I couldn't hear you before, but now I can. Hopefully, I can continue to hear you.
I've heard you the whole time, Arkirsty.
But
You'll be in the recording.
yeah, but the like, other people that kind of joined, took up crypto to be for kind of on the rebellious side, or whatever. They may end up being like a little bit disappointed with how things are going to work out, and it may not be exactly how they imagined it to. Because I mean, the institutions are here, and there is a centralization and control
Yeah. So
concern.
I don't think it's bad that institutions are in the game. I guess like the thing I worry about is that all the tools will be created by institutions and nothing else. Like for instance, now that Privy is acquired by Stripe, it's just a matter of time before, if you want to do a financial transaction on Privy, you're gonna have to do a KYC, right?
Right.
Like that's gonna happen now that
And-
Stripe is involved, because Stripe is gonna
Yeah.
ensure that there's compliance and all this other kind of stuff.
And the other thing about Stripe is, I mean, their business model is taking a cut of the transactions that go through it, so they'll probably figure out some way to get a cut of transactions that are going through Privy.
Yeah.
But
And
there are
obviously-
like, yeah, I was actually looking. I mean, there are like other projects, like other like alternatives and stuff. So and I would imagine that would continue to be the case. So hopefully there's room for people that are experimenting and kind of
Excuse me.
doing their doing their own thing, and they're able to do it with like not paying a huge tax to some centralized entity.
Yeah, I mean that's a hope, and I do think like like you could make the argument that like, okay, so you have to KYC to be on Privy, but in general users care more about convenience than anything else, right? Like they'll KYC if they get the convenience that they need, and in doing so there'll be more adoption for some of these tools, which will create more incentive for people to build on those tools, which means that like more alternatives can emerge that don't require that kind of stuff, right? And so, which do end up helping those people in the in those kind of developing nations that help bank the unbanked kind of thing. So you could make that argument too, but I don't know. I just feel it's hard for me. I guess I just don't necessarily know how I should feel necessarily about this yet. I just feel a general feeling of unease with some of this stuff.
was thinking about, we were discussing that the other day about how Stripe feels about it. Do you think they see themselves as like sort of like the stodgy connection to the like old world, or do you think they see themselves as like the new disruptor trying to like bring forth those technologies? I honestly don't know, right? Like I don't know anybody at Stripe. I have no personal connection or anything like that. But thinking about it as a company, like they seem to be doing things in a obviously a very compliant way and obviously a very successful way. But I think at their in their heart of hearts, they're probably still think of themselves as the disruptor.
Yeah, it's the thing about private companies is that like it's like they're companies and you know they have like a certain narrative that has been crafted, right? And so that is definitely Stripe's narrative. I'm actually a Stripe user from way back, right? Because like they came up at a time when PayPal was kind of the only alternative to accept credit cards online, and the using the PayPal SDK was just gross. It was just the worst developer experience. And Stripe came in and they made it easy. They're like, hey, you can literally do this in one line of code. And it's just like, oh, this is awesome, right? Like I'm going to use this all the time. I used it, like I've been using it for like, oh, I don't know, probably like
hundreds of projects. Me too, right? Like absolutely. I agree. It's very similar experiences.
So they're definitely a disruptor in that way. And that's definitely how they feel about themselves. But at the end of the day, every private corporation, um, they're about the money, right? Like they make a lot of other justifications. They will have values. They will have narratives that they tell themselves. They will have like all these other kinds of things. But ultimately, they're about the money, and they have to be legally. That is the nature of a corporation, of a private corporation, right? Like they have
Do you
to.
put any credence on the fact that they've elected not to go public and remain private in the face of like if money making was their principal like goal, or growth with no limits was their principal goal? For sure, they would have tried to go public, get as much money as possible, grow as quick as possible. But it seems like they might be taking maybe a more sensitive route through like corporate growth, which I think is an interesting experiment, if nothing else.
There are certain, like the reason to go public is to get a bunch of investment so that you can then use it to expand. But Stripe has ridiculous access to capital. It doesn't necessarily need to go public. Like if it can do like a $1-2 billion deal for a private investment, it doesn't necessarily need to go public. And actually going public is puts a lot more burden on them from their own accounting processes.
And
so
yeah, tons of accounting for sure, and like as you say, tons more mandates in terms of requirements to earn money for shareholders, right? Like the fiduciary responsibility of a public corporation is obviously very well mandated by the law. So yeah, no, it's weird stuff.
So like it's just that like Stripe is a cash flow generating business. They're not like a startup going public, right? And so like an Uber going public when they're still losing money. It's essentially like the VCs are dumping on retail. Like they're basically saying like, hey, we got a ton of adoption. We didn't figure out how to make the business work, but we have like billions of people using this thing. So you know now we want to get our money back, and it's up to the public to figure out how to make this an actual business.
Yeah. I guess if you put like it's VCs versus like, public markets, then for sure both have their sort of degrees of dislikability, I guess, let's say.
Yeah. And so like on Stripe side though, like because they're like making a ton of money, right? Like they don't ever need to go public. They can always borrow the money they need. The only reasons for them to go public is really like there's things that they can't do otherwise. And I think like them keeping it private, like if I had a business that was just making me money hand over fist, and I didn't need money to expand, I would never take it public, right? Like, because why would I? There's no incentive for me to do so. So all this to say that like they do keep more control, and they don't have that like fiduciary duty to public shareholders, but they still do have a fiduciary duty to their private shareholders, and it's clear they know how to play the investment and money making game. if they weren't all about money, like Stripe is about money, right? Like that's their business. So if they weren't all about money, they wouldn't have been successful as they are. So like
For sure, all companies are that make money. Like money is the blood that allows a company to live. For sure,
yeah.
like we all like all everything takes money, employees, whatever resources or whatever. But I think at the end of the day, like we're all thinking back to whatever the mission is of the organization, right? And hopefully the mission and vision is like a good and positive one. As to what Stripes is, I'm not going to like say what it is or isn't or defend it in any way or in particular, or whatever. It just strikes me as interesting. They're kind of choosing a different road, and hopefully, if they do choose a different road, it allows them to maybe be more mission oriented and opinionated in the future towards positive rather than status quo.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also I was looking at applying to Stripe a couple of years ago, and so I talked to a bunch of people who I knew that worked there, and basically they told me it was a lot like the culture at Amazon, and Amazon's culture is like really let's just say cutthroat. So it is the kind of people who work there are the kind of people who are like ambitious. They want to make money. They want to make the company money because in doing so they're going to succeed as well. Not to say that that's a bad thing in any way, shape, or form.
No, it's certainly a proven record for success for them, right? And their like business is proof positive of it.
Exactly. So when I say I'm feeling unease, it's not that I'm like, hey, this is definitely going to be a bad thing, and these kinds of things. It's more just like, hey, what is this? What is this going to mean? Like, what are the wildfires were a way bigger deal,
It's like the
and
deck
so
is
I don't know.
thrown up
Yeah,
in the air, right?
and
It's like
and for
you
those
kind of knew
LA
before
riots
who
in
were holding
like
the
that
aces, and now it's
Sublime
just like
references,
people are
those
grabbing the
were
cards as they
a
fall,
really
and
big
we're not
deal
really
as
sure
well, right?
like
Because the whole
where the
city was
power is
shut down
concentrating and something like
for
that. Is maybe the
like a
feeling I've
week.
been feeling.
I think I watched a documentary, a Netflix documentary on it recently. So yeah, it's funny. I never made that connection of those LA riots in the 80s with this. 90, oh yeah, 90s. Yeah, yeah.
Well, and sometimes, often, that's the unwritten goal to get acquired, regardless of what they say publicly. Speaking of getting acquired or getting a private investment, I don't know
Yeah.
how
So
fresh this is,
that
but I
was
was just
something that was
reading
giving me a
about
lot of
it
malaise. Sorry, Shelby, I cut you off. Go ahead.
this morning. Was about
That
OpenAI
that
suing
realization was
Microsoft
something that was like that. I was
um,
like, it was one of the reasons
because
for my
they want to
malaise is that
acquire
like
this other
our media is
AI
just broken, right? And
company
like I just don't
that does a
see
Copilot competitor,
how we can
basically,
fix it
and
because it's like
that's all on
so
machine.
so
Because,
broken. And
for
so,
example, in
like I was like
healthcare and
thinking in
some
my
other
head through a couple of years, like,
sensitive
okay,
areas, you can't use
how
Copilot
might we
to use
fix
those
like
circumstances.
this thing of media?
Their secure
But like
environment would have to
it's
be on
such a
machine.
big apparatus,
Anyway,
like
so
media
the
in
point
general,
being is that
that
the deal
it
that
just feels like
OpenAI
such
signed with
a
Microsoft was
such
for
first of all, it feels
billion-dollar
like an
investment
existential threat
that
to
Microsoft
humanity for me,
got
or maybe not humanity,
100%
but an
of
existential threat
any
to like,
IP,
let's say our society or our way
including
of
any
life,
acquisition.
like the way that like our
So the
relationship
fact
to
that this
media.
company is a direct
So that was one
competitor
thing that was
to
just like, oh
Microsoft's
man,
Copilot,
that
if
sucks.
OpenAI
And then the
does
second
acquire
thing I was
them,
thinking
then
is
Microsoft
like,
immediately gets
it's
the
so
IP.
big that like, is there any way
And
to
so that's
even
super
fix it without
anti-competitive.
just burning it all
So
down? I don't
yeah,
even know. Anyways, that's
in
what I was
hindsight
thinking about
now,
this
it
morning,
looks like
and
OpenAI
what prompted
maybe
this
shouldn't have
vibe check
taken
was
$1 billion
because I was like,
from
our media is
Microsoft.
just broken.
Right, of course. $1 billion is a lot of money. But their hands are kind of tied right now. Yeah. And they'll end up settling out of court. Yeah, no kidding.
I'm good. I'm good. I think it's funny the use of Sublime, like to relate to this, right? Did you pick that music on purpose? Really? Ah, Maybe. So just, I don't know. LA, the riot, Sublime. It just, and then what's going on in LA right now.
It's a 2-block area. LA County is 4,000 square miles.
Yeah. Well, it makes me wonder if that's what we're moving towards. Like, basically not believing anything unless you see it yourself, which also puts us in the Stone Age in a way, right? And so it's interesting because like I did have a citizen journalist that I supported in Hamilton when I used to live there, and a guy by the name of Joey Coleman. I think he's still working, but basically when I asked him about it, because I thought it was so interesting, I was like, oh, we can like you can make enough money to get
But
supported,
then
and he was just like,
the spin
well,
on
not
it
really,
was
you know, like I
coming,
can do a
frankly,
crowd fund
out of
every
the White
year,
House
and
was
it's not enough to live on, but it's
there were
enough to
lies.
like
And
get
people
some
that were there.
sponsorships
I
and
mean,
stuff,
my
and
ex
you know
lives in
maybe through
Glendale, and he
those I
has
can live, but
friends
then you know
and he
then
was
I have
at the
sponsors,
protest
you
on
know, so it's
Saturday.
the same problem as
what they're
traditional
saying on
media.
news is
So
total bullshit.
he was really like, you know, he's trying to curate his sponsors and that kind of thing, but ultimately he said like it's really difficult as a citizen journalist anywhere, and Hamilton is like relatively large for, you know, it's like something like 700,000 people, right? And so it's like not, I mean, that's roughly the size of San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like that's the same amount of people roughly as San Francisco, right? And so it's not a small city, and even a like a dedicated city, right? Like it's even smaller.
Agreed. I've been thinking about journalism a lot lately, actually. And you know, we've had some groups in the Web3 space like JournoDAO that was trying to do this decentralized source journalism.
Yeah, which I should add is why we're here.
Is almost dead. These media organizations have bought it up, and it's all
but yeah, it is really difficult out there, and I guess we're getting to the end of time, so we may as well wrap it up.
Where's your
yeah,
local?
I do think it is difficult out there, especially if you're a small organization. But actually, I think that those small organizations, that's where the passion is, right? Like that's where the care is. And one thing I often say when I'm setting up teams is that the person who cares is the one who can make the best decision. The person who cares is the one who should be leading that project, because they're the one who's going to make sure that it actually fulfills its purpose.
Yeah, I think.
And so when you're in a small organization and you see that there are people who care around, it's almost heartbreaking to see that they just don't have that requisite skill set to get the funding they need to make an impact. And I think that's the nut we're trying to crack, right? Like how can we create more citizen journalists? How can we create more of these purpose-driven organizations? How can we empower the people who care to bring what they care about into the world, to be the change that they want to see?
You don't know what to believe unless you.
That's the question that we're trying to answer here at BCard. It is a difficult question, and it is a worthy question. And so even if we have feelings of malaise and other kinds of things like that, just keep in mind that we can act locally. We can do things in the area around us to make the world a little bit better here. And in the best case, maybe we can crack the code. Maybe we can figure out some way to empower other kinds of communities. So thanks, everyone. I appreciate you all. Talk to you later. Bye. he was really like, he's trying to curate his sponsors and that kind of thing, but ultimately he said like it's really difficult as a citizen journalist anywhere, and Hamilton is like relatively large for, it's like something like 700,000 people, right? And so it's like not, I mean, that's roughly the size of San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like that's the same amount of people roughly as San Francisco, right? And so it's not a small city, and even like a dedicated citizen journalist there has trouble getting the funds to do that. So like, what do you do in your town of 250,000 people, right? Like it's even smaller.
Right.
Because it
Full-time
feels like
jobs that
everything is
people are
a
doing.
small business these days, right? Like everything's got to justify its own existence through the raising of financial resources to support its own whatever vision. And I think relying on like small groups, like whatever it is, 3 or 4 small community organizations, to be able to have all of the necessary and requisite skills to pull together like financial fundraising along with like activism, action, reporting, like it's a huge lift. It's interesting to see sort of like as you say, I've seen lots of people around here in my small town start up like similar small community based organizations or whatever that have gone to fallow because it's so difficult to, even with a small like team of 4 or 5 people, to run a thing to make it really worthwhile and financially sustainable over the long run.
Yeah, which I should add is why we're here.
Yeah,
I was just thinking that as you were saying that, Tom.
But yeah, it is really difficult out there. And I guess we're getting to the end of time, so we may as well wrap it up. But yeah, I do think it is difficult out there, especially if you're a small organization. But actually, I think that those small organizations, that's where the passion is, right? Like that's where the care is. And one thing I often say when I'm setting up teams is that the person who cares is the one who can make the best decision. The person who cares is the one who should be leading that project, because they're the one who's going to make sure that it actually fulfills its purpose. And so when you're in a small organization and you see that there are people who care around, it's almost heartbreaking to see that they just don't have that requisite skill set to get the funding they need to make an impact. And I think that's the nut we're trying to crack, right? Like, how can we create more citizen journalists? How can we create more of these purpose-driven organizations? How can we empower the people who care to bring what they care about into the world, to be the change that they want to see? That's the question that we're trying to answer here at BCard. It is a difficult question, and it is a worthy question. And so even if we have feelings of malaise and other kinds of things like that, just keep in mind that we can act locally. We can do things in the area around us to make the world a little bit better here. And in the best case, maybe we can crack the code. Maybe we can figure out some way to empower other kinds of communities. So thanks, everyone. I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thanks to you too. Thanks to everybody.
Talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye for now.